Hey guys, Enigmatic Mr. L here to talk about what I consider to be the worst chapter in each Fire Emblem game. So, going over the rules, first and foremost, this list is obviously extremely subjective. This isn't about talking like unit quality or best and worst weapons or best worst skills or classes, where you can be a little bit more objective looking at stats. Obviously, some of these maps I'm sure some people enjoy. I'm sure there's other maps I didn't choose. People might wonder why I didn't choose those maps instead. So, this is all just my own personal opinion. And this opinion is a mixture of both lasting impressions as well as first impressions. Like some of these maps, they're bad when I first played them, they're bad on repeat playthroughs. Some of them, once you know the tricks, they're not so bad on subsequent playthroughs, but that negative first impression just kind of lasts. I'm not factoring in DLC maps, but everything else is fair game. So paralogs, route splits, otherwise optional maps, they're all fair game. And last but not least, I'm combining the remakes with the originals. So I'm combining Shadow Dragon, the Blade of Light with Shadow Dragon, Gaiden with Echoes, Shadows of Valentia, and Mystery of the Emblem with New Mystery of the Emblem. With that out of the way, let's just get on with the list. Okay, so starting with Shadow Dragon / Shadow Dragon Blade of Light, the first entry, I decided to go with Chosen by Fate, the in-game chapter. So admittedly, Shadow Dragon was the second Fire Emblem game I ever played, so I wasn't very experienced, but in my first playthrough, I was doing fine, losing a unit here and there. Some of them I could have just reset it. I decided to push on without, but I was doing overall fine. Then I got to this map with just like separating up your army, powerful enemies, huge waves of reinforcement. It just became a bloodbath. Like most of my army ended up dying. It could be like a lot tricky, like Medius. Most units can like barely do anything to hurt him. The game kind of suggests, you have Marth use the falchion, but especially on higher difficulties, Medius probably just kill Marth. And just even on subsequent playthroughs, like, there's a trick where you just kind of like warp in Tiki, attack Medius, he'll kill a reviver, then like send her back in to deal the finishing blow, which is the most reliable strat. That's kind of boring. So a map that's either just like frustrating at worst to play or boring at best and just kind of anticlimactic earns it a spot on this list. For Gaiden and its remake, Shadows of Valentia, I went with Attack on Dolph Keep, which is a map in Act 4 on Celica's route. I think in general, Echoes, Shadows of Valentia, as well as Gaiden, has probably the overall worst map quality in the series. Alm's maps are just kind of boring, bland, and forgettable. Celica's maps are like frustrating. And this, I think, is the prime example of like what a frustrating map is. You got this like swamp / lava that heavily restricts your movement, deals 5 damage every turn. You got these cantors, which are always annoying, but especially these that summon like powerful dragons. And even once you get like towards the end, floor tiles in a Guidance remake have like plus 20 evasion for whatever reason, so it's just hard to land your attacks. Overall, just a very frustrating map to play. So for Mystery of the Emblem and New Mystery Emblem, I did actually consider for this one going with some of the Gaiden chapters exclusive to the remake. Like there are a few Fog of War maps, which trust me, we'll get into that later. There's one with like the boss has a siege tome and like a Fog of War map. But ultimately, I just decided to go with Chapter 11 in Mystery of the Emblem Book 2 and Chapter 11 New Mystery of the Emblem. It's Henri's Way. So part of the map's frustrating. It's one of those desert maps where there's all these like hidden items you really want to get. Encourage you to just basically look up a guide and like, spend a long time in the map. But also just the big thing is like there are these dragons which have huge movement, and it's and you just have this open like field. There's no like walls, just kind of protect your weaker units. It becomes a very frustrating map to play. As far as I'm aware, like the meta strategy for the DS games is just kind of like have as many flyers as you possibly can reclass into. But generally, I'm someone who likes using like a variety of different classes. So when I played this map, I had my Chris and the Myrmidon like Swordmaster class. But this was the one map I was like took advantage. Okay, I'm changing as many people I can to flyers just to deal with this map. Then after I cleared it, I kind of changed them back to have more variety, even if it wasn't as optimal. It's just more fun for me personally. But just this map that forced me to like change. Okay, map as many flyers as you can. Wyverns like or dragons and like big open space. Annoying and frustrating map to play. So for Genealogy of the Holy War, I went with Chapter 7, Beyond the Desert. So the meta strategy, as far as I can tell, for the second generation of Genealogy of the Holy War, is to have Seliph inherit the Paragon Band, along with other like stat boosting rings and a good sword. Have him basically solo Chapter 6, and then by the time he's done with the arena in Chapter 7, he's good to promote. But the problem is, once you get to this map, he doesn't really get to make the best use of that his new horse, because you have that like desert right away, which heavily restricts your movement. And then even just beyond that, you have like the first boss you have to face. He says he misplaced the siege stone, but the same turn he finds it, he gets to use it and just like snipe one of your units. Shannon and Daisy, even with the Balmong, Shannon faces low but still real present hit rates. So you can just play this map like quote unquote correctly, but Shannon faces like a small but realistic chance of just death, and you have to like reset, do it over. Then once you start like advancing, south on the map, you have to deal with siege tomes and like ballista, always just like fun to deal with. And then it's just also frustrating once you clear that castle, like Leaf and his group get under attack again, and they can be kind of difficult to protect them. On subsequent playthroughs, I've learned like you either like prepare Leaf, give him like a light brand and armor slayer, or if you really want to invest, like the pursuit band. And it can be more easy to hold down the line, or especially if you just don't care about like protecting the castle, you can just send Fee in like as soon as you start the chapter and have them like use a return staff on them to get them to safety. That's one way of doing it. It's also just frustrating, like at least my playstyle personally, it's like once Leaf's group is under attack again, I want to go over to the east to help him out, but the castle to the north of the southwest is where you go to recruit the dancer. But if I think that the last castle I see, I think the map just like it ends and you don't get the dancer. So I end up going over to east, helping out like Leaf and Co, defeating the boss, not seizing the castle, then heading west, then north, seize that castle, have Eris visit get dancer, then head south and east again to seize. I don't know, maybe you can like seize the castle and the dancer just joins automatically, but I never wanted to risk it. I just feel like this chapter in general is like emblematic of Genealogy of the Holy War's like biggest problems, just slow, tedious, like overly large, monotonous maps to play, and they're large without a purpose. So for Thracia 776, I went with the Loctrian Altar, which is Gaiden chapter 24X. This is the first Fog of War chapter in this list, and trust me, it won't be the last. So this is Thracia Fog, which is even more, hardcore, quote-unquote hardcore than like later iterations of it. All the tiles are perfectly pitch black. It's not even that you don't know where enemies are. You don't know where anything is. In your first playthrough, you're going to deal with like these dark mages that use rewarp that just like infinitely spawn and come to your units, which granted they can't attack on the same turn they use rewarp, but it's still annoying. I do find it interesting that to an extent the enemy actually cares about Fog of War in this map. Like if there are no enemies within your unit's range, you won't have any Dark Sorcerers rewarp in, which I do think is interesting, which later versions of Fog of War had it so the enemy is affected, at least to an extent, by Fog of War. But beyond that, you're dealing with these powerful Berserker enemies with like Wrath, Devil Axe, which granted it can be funny when the Devil Axe backfires on the enemy, but they're still annoying to deal with. And the big thing is there's these like random points in the map that end up just warping your units to like an execution chamber where the enemies constantly pop in to fight them. Even if you can manage to like hold off the enemies like long enough, this is an escape map. So enemy unit that does not escape, and this is the second to last chapter, they're left behind. So it doesn't matter if they can survive the enemies or not. They could be like completely invincible. They'll still be left behind for the final battle. And just to really rub salt in the wound, this map doesn't even give you like a rescue staff anywhere. Now, there are ways to cheese this map. You just kind of warp someone in, maybe like Sed with Forseti to the escape point, deal with those dark mages there, then just from there you warp and rewarp and rescue to get everyone out. But at worst, it's a very frustrating map to play, especially if you play blind. And at best, you end up just using some of your precious like warp or precious staff uses, which you probably want to save for like the final map. And so in general, I just find this map, other than the first time, just to get a little story impact, you're better off just skipping it entirely. Binding Blade has a few stinker maps, in my opinion. I think the ones that immediately come to mind are Chapter 7, 14, and 21, all multiples of 7. Chapter 7, I think, of the three is the most difficult. It happens early on. You don't have your best units and tools at your disposal, but it also happens later on, so that you can be like affected by how much EXP you're getting, or if your units are RNG screwed, that sort of thing. But it just has a little bit too much going on, but I don't think it's the worst map in Binding Blade. Chapter 21, Binding Blade is infamous for its like ambush mons, and I think Chapter 21 take those up to a whole new level. But it is kind of fitting. It's like Murdoch. It's like the big battle before you take down before you attempt to fight Zephiel. It's kind of fitting, and on subsequent playthroughs, you can know what trick there's it's zone based reinforcements. You can like kind of have your units like ferry across the mountains with a flyer to avoid a large part of them, and then just kind of like warp Roy to boss killer near the end to skip a large part of it. So my choice is Chapter 14, Arcadia. This map has a lot of problems, which on an individual level, they aren't so bad, but they combine to make like a very frustrating, annoying map to play. There's Fog of War, which, is always annoying. To be fair, at this point, you have maybe up to 3 thieves in your army. You have torches, you have torch staffs, so okay. You have to protect Sophia if you want the good ending and like the Gaiden chapter. She's a very like squishy unit, but even though it's a Fog of War map in all my playthroughs, I've never had any real trouble keeping her alive in this map. You're under a time limit, 25 turns, but in general, I don't. At least if you want the Gaiden chapter, but in general, in all my playthroughs, I've never really had a problem with this turn limit, like really pushing it to its limit. You have restricted movement because it's sand, but you have flyers. You just got Milady, an excellent unit in the previous chapter, plus Shauna, if you've been like training her, and mages like trained Lou or trained Lelina are unaffected by the penalty terrain. You have to collect all the, or you don't need to, but you're going to want to collect all this like hidden treasure. You're going to want to consult a guide, but thieves can help with that. Or if you're not using thieves, there is like a glitch you can use, like guarantee anyone gets it. Really powerful enemies like Wyvern Riders and dragons, but Wyvern Riders, you can make short work of them using like Air Caliber. Dragons are also kind of fairly weak to magic. They only attack one range. Ambush spawns, but they appear in like the bottom left corner of the map. By the time they appear, you're probably far enough advanced. So, and the boss is annoying, but that's just kind of par for the course for Binding Blade. So all in all, it's like every problem on an individual level isn't really that bad, except maybe Fog of War. But you combine them together, it's just a very unfun map to play. On my last few hard mode playthroughs of Binding Blade, I managed to get through this both times without losing any units. But it's still a map every time I get to, I'm just like, can I just skip this map, just get the rewards, get the items, few EXP, and just move on to the next chapter? It's always a chapter, I got to go through this before I can continue with the rest of the game. Overall, just not a great map. For Blazing Blade, I went with Battle Before Dawn, Chapter 26 in Elliewood mode, Chapter 28 in Hector mode. So it's a Fog of War map, and you're trying to protect Zephiel. The same Zephiel who ends up growing up to be like the big bad in Binding Blade, which is kind of, twist the knife in of how difficult this map is. I know Fire Emblem has some, very time-sensitive, like, especially side objectives, like, oh, you didn't protect this, like, NPC, and, like, you didn't get to them in turn 2, like, they're dead. I think this is one of the maps that pushes you as, like, a really strict, time limit in terms of something that's the main objective, not like an optional side objective, because you really have to have your units booked to, like, protect, get over to Zephiel to, like, protect him. All the while, you're dealing with Fog of War. It's always annoying. Ursula is an annoying boss. She has bolting, and after a set amount of turns, she'll start like charging towards Zephiel. So you think you're safe, and she'll just zap him and just end your run. You have to like reset. And their thieves are also like very hard, in my opinion, to intercept. And it's not like there's just some minor rewards. Like there's some good stuff in here. Brave Lance, boots, increased movement's always nice. Delphi Shield protects your flyers from arrows. And Rescue, which I think is just like a cruel joke on just this chapter by the part of the developers. It's like Rescue would be so good to have like right from the start of this map. Like getting it in this map just feels like a joke. And of course, there's also the fact of even if you play this map perfectly, there's a small but real chance just Jafar dies before you get a chance to recruit him with Nino. It's a small chance, but it's still something that can happen, and that's just kind of frustrating. I've seen some point out, I wish they could pull like an Avel from like Thracia 776 where he never has like 100% displayed hit against him, and he'll always like dodge attacks that would kill him. Just, there's less like RNG in this chapter. But even just knowing that, this chapter is just very annoying to play. For Sacred Stones, I think the obvious pick would be the Phantom Ship, annoying Fog of War map to play. I do think that map is rough, but it's in a way, aside from Fog of War, it feels kind of fair but challenging, especially in a game like Sacred Stones, which kind of leaves you wanting a bit more challenge. My pick is something that is really only kind of frustrating for your first playthrough, maybe first few, but just the pain of it just kind of sticks with you. And that is Victims of War, Chapter 6. It's your first Fog of War map in the game. And like on subsequent playthroughs, it's fine. Just send Seth up north, then to the right, defeat the boss. Boom, get your Ryan's Bolt, save the villagers. Just move on. Not too bad. But your first playthrough, where you're like probably not looking up like a map online, you're just kind of playing it by ear, figuring things out. It's frustrating. You head like south. It's okay. There's a village here. It's probably something good. It's just an antitoxin, and that village is just kind of away from probably optimal path. We head north and then east. There's like a axe fighter with like a halberdier or something that's like super effective against cavalry. I don't think it can like quite one shot Seth, but it leaves him at low HP, and then a mage can just come in and finish him off, which I've seen happen for someone wasn't even their first playthrough. There's also just the fact that what you get from protecting the villagers is an Orion's Bolt, which just feels bad whether you're plan on using Namie or not. If you do plan on using Namie, then it's not really like an optional reward. You kind of need it, unless you want to like have her use like the Earth Seal pretty late. Those kind of highly contested items. If you're not planning on using her, then it's like it should have just been like gold. You're basically going to sell it anyway. I think there's like a chest in Chapter 8. I could be wrong. That's like 10,000 gold or something. I think that reward should have been swapped with the Ryan's Bolt. So if you miss out on the villagers, it's okay, you missed some gold. Oh well, but you can still get the Ryan's Bolt later. Overall, just not the worst map ever, but it's certainly annoying. Path of Radiance, ironically, even though it has two Fog of War maps, I don't think either of them are that bad. I think the two worst maps in Path of Radiance are either like the Pitfall Bridge or like the Eat Rock map. And I decided to go with Eat Rock, which is Strange Lands, Chapter 25. Having the boulders just roll down, taking like a big chunk of HP after units is annoying. Having to watch it each time it rolls down, on top of Path of Radiance's notoriously slow enemy phase, is also annoying. And just the real kicker here is all of your mounted units have heavily restricted movement here. So cavalry units pretty dominant in Path of Radiance. So if you're playing this chapter and it's okay, I've been training up, I'm using like high movement units. I've got Titania, I'm still using her. I've trained up Oscar and Kieran. I trained Astrid with a Paragon, recruited Maclaw, I've been using him. I think you get Joffrey last chapter, so you're prepared to use these like high movement units, and it's like they can't do like the one thing that makes them so great with their high movement. And it just feels bad the units that you're heavily investing into, they become suddenly much worse for like one map. For Radiant Dawn, I went with A Reason to Fight, which is Part 3, Chapter 6 map. Another Fog of War map where you fight powerful Laguz enemies. After, getting back with the Grail mercenaries, you have some good units, you're having fun, and you have to go back to the Dawn Brigade, you find out that most of them are like under-leveled compared to the enemies you're facing, which leads like to, I think, the optimal strat is just kind of invest in like 2 or so members of the Dawn Brigade, so otherwise there's not enough really EXP to go around. It's just kind of frustrating. That's also just once you get back to the Dawn Brigade, it's like, okay, it makes sense you can't have, the Black Knight, at least from the start. It makes sense you can't have, like, the Wolf Queen. But then it's also you don't even get, like, Tormod. Terranio's still not with you, despite being already absent for a few chapters. The units would be nice to have. You don't have those. It's just difficult. And, like, last time I played Radiant Dawn, it was on hard mode. I got to this chapter, and I said, maybe I was too hard in my previous judgment on it. And then it's all, like, right from the first enemy display, it's like, all the enemies were like going to two-shot like Edward or Nolan. It's like, maybe I wasn't too hard on this. The Black Knight, having him appear like around turn 5 does help, but it's not enough to really save this map from being like really terrible in my opinion. Because even if like the Black Knight was around on turn 1, if you just like used him to clear the map by himself, I feel like you're just kind of pushing the problem back because you have to go back to the Dawn Brigade for a few chapters later. And if you just completely solo the Black Knight, they're going to be struggling for EXP again. So I've already covered Shadow Dragon and its remake, and I've already covered Shadow Dragon Blade of Light's remake, Shadow Dragon, covered Mystery of the Emblem, new Mystery of the Emblem. So on to Awakening. Awakening in general, I think the map quality, they're just kind of bland. Not bad, not good, just like empty field, bunch of enemies. It's like kill the boss or kill them all. So it was kind of tricky to find like a map I think was truly terrible. I know, like, especially if we're playing on like hard mode, some of the later maps can get like enemy spam heavy, like ambush spawns. But by that point, you've had like a trained up Robin with like Nosferatu, or trained up like Donald if you want to go like zero to hero arc. You can generally just kind of solo it with like a pair of units, or at least do heavy lifting with like 2 or so units. The map I ended up choosing is Paralog 3, A Strangled Peace. Uh, it's not really that bad of a map. It's probably the least bad on this entire list, but it is kind of annoying. When you first unlock it, you're trying to protect these 3 like NPC villagers, which in true like NPC fashion, they just head straight into like danger and like basically suicide. It can be kind of difficult to keep them alive if you do this paralog as soon as it's unlocked. If you do it later, your team's stronger. It's pretty easy, but you're probably going to do it when it first unlocks to get the EXP. And the reward for keeping all villagers alive is just like a ladle or a log. Which on one hand, I guess you could say it's like, well, at least you don't lose that much. They get killed, but it's also just kind of disappointing. Like if they do get killed, you get reprimanded. It's like, oh, I couldn't protect them. And it's like, well, I could have, but they're morons. And if you do bother to protect them, it's like, here's a worthless item. Like I said, probably the least bad map on this list, but I had to choose something. For Fates, I'm splitting it into the 3 routes. For Birthright, I went with Chapter 23, Camilla. I think it's often joked about that, like, Birthright, you just, once Ryoma joins, just give him, like, a corn backpack and have them, like, solo the rest of the game. It's not Iron Man proof, because he can and will die. You'll probably have to reset here and there. But I still think overall this is, like, the easiest way to play the game. And if you don't want to do that, it's like, no, I don't actually use my units. I mean, I'm not going to use Ryoma, or I am going to use him, but I'm going to try, have the others fight as well. Especially by the time you get this chapter, I feel like it's just easier to just go, okay, just have, even if you're not using Ryoma, just have Corrin and with a backpack solo this, or Corrin as the backpack with everyone solo this. Just because Camilla fires like fireballs like every few turns using Dragon Fang. It's not like a one-time use thing. She just keeps doing it. It's hard to like manage your like HP if you have like multiple units, like multiple enemies. The map that just like basically encourages you to like basically just kind of solo it or like semi-solo it, I think is an annoying, frustrating one. For Fate's Conquest, I went with Night Breaks Through Endgame. It's in my opinion, it's not just that the worst map in Conquest. It's not just the worst map in Fates. It's not just the worst like in-game map out of all the Fire Emblem games. Night Breaks Through Fate's Conquest Endgame is, in my opinion, the worst map in the entire series. Now, other maps in Conquest, depending on what characters you're using and what classes you're giving them, you might have a more difficult time compared to someone who's using like units better fit for that map. Like, for example, you get the Fuga's Wild Ride or the Hinoka map. If you're not using like many or any at all flyers, you're going to have a more difficult time something that does. Okay, that's fair. Or if you get to like Ninja Hell, if you decide to turn Shura into a pair of boots, you might have a more difficult time with that map as opposed to someone decides to use them for that map. Okay, that's fair enough. Fate's Conquest, the end game, I feel like if you don't spend the entire game preparing for your in-game team, your in-game strategy, you're gonna have a bad time. It's like generally when I replay Conquest now, I know like the one-turn cheese strat. You train up a Takumi killer. You save like your uses of like the rescue staff. Give a few like units with shelter, and then either have someone with a trap or pass. You have like the one-turn clear. You can just cheese it, but just knowing that there's a cheese strategy, it doesn't save this map from being terrible. Like, and also, I know there are ways to just kind of clear it without cheesing it. Like I've seen units, it's like we're not going to use the rescue staff. We're just going to like send our units in. We're not going to have any deaths either, and that is possible, but it's not something I think like the average Fire Emblem player is going to be like able to do right away. Just like I said, just having the map that's like basically can soft lock units. Like, did you spend your entire game preparing for this? Just the staff that have the enemy exclusive skill. It's like inevitable end. That's it. It's like it stacks with like stat penalties, infinite reinforcements that constantly like bombard you. Takumi activating Dragon Veins, and Takumi himself being like fairly difficult to take out because he got like a clone of himself that fills up like a shield gauge. He can trigger vengeance. Overall, a terrible, terrible map that I'm glad at the very least I can just one turn and cheese it on the subsequent playthroughs. For Fire Emblem Fates Revelation, I think the obvious choice would be either like the show snuggling map or the elevator map. Personally, I didn't mind either one of those that much. I think the show snuggling map, it's slow, it's tedious, But in my opinion, it's more forgettable than anything else. Like I play it, it's like, okay, well, that took a while, and then I just kind of forget about it. It's not really frustrating per se. The Elverred map, it has some powerful enemies. It might take a while to beat, but I feel like that one, it's fine, I guess. I do think Revelations map design is subpar overall, but it's more so gimmicky than outright horrible, at least in my opinion. For my pick for Revelations, I decided to go with Chapter 17, Black Flames. So this is a two-part chapter. After you clear Chapter 16, you're immediately heading into Chapter 17, and you can't even save between them. So if you end up messing here, you have to redo Chapter 16 again, which is the main reason why it's on this list. Now, granted, you just got Ryoma, like I said, a very powerful unit. The last map, he can do like some heavy work for you. But you also get like Xander and Leo appearing on turn 2, and then their retainers appear on turn 3. And sometimes it can be difficult to keep them alive because you don't get to like have the control of them and like the deployment screen. And if you want to get all the child characters, you have to keep all of them alive. And if one of them dies with resetting, have to play like an additional map again. It's frustrating. I'm glad that Engage like learned from this, and with its two-parter maps, you can save in between them. And in order to prevent like a soft lock, if you're having trouble, you can go back to the previous like chapter. But overall, I think this is Revelation's worst map. For no other reason than it's like part of two-parter. You have to like reset if something goes wrong. So I've already covered Echoes, Shadows of Valentia. So on to Fire Emblem Three Houses. Overall, I think the map design in Fire Emblem Three Houses, it's all right. It's not great, but it's not terrible either. However, I do think Maddening mode is just unplay tested. It's like people just went, like the developers went in and said, okay, inflate all the enemy stats, sharply reduce EXP game, add a few like skills like Poison Strike and Pass, make bosses aggressive, and make all enemy enforcements ambush spawns, and just call it a day. It just turns in like from the first playthrough playing like hard mode, like it's fine, maybe a little bland, maybe you could use a bit more challenge, but it's fine. Then the Maddening goes wrong, just really messes up. I'll just give a few highlights of some of the worst parts of Maddening mode. You have Chapter 2, when you realize pretty much all of your units besides Byleth and your main lord, and like maybe Dedue, die in like 2 hits. All of your units struggle to deal like meaningful damage to the enemy. They just have like gang up on them, attacking with like bows and magic. Plus you have to deal with like annoying stats or annoying skills like Pass and Poison Strike. Things don't get better in Chapter 3, which is a Fog of War map. It's already annoying. At least in hard mode, it's not too bad because the fog is temporarily after you defeat like a certain unit. But Fog of War with like hyperinflated enemy stats still early on in the game before you can like access your best like skills and that sort of thing is frustrating. Then you have Chapter 4, which originally you could realistically like split your army in half to like kill more enemies, get more XP, get more treasure. Here, realistically, on Maddening mode, most players just kind of like turtle, head down to like all to the left or head down to the right, and it completely destroys the Death Knight's character because originally he only attacks if you get directly in his range, like within one range. Now he like has his entire movement. He'll like charge at you, even though he'll say like, "I told you if you fled, I would not pursue you." Or you can also just aggro him, I think, if you don't enter in his range through various means. So frustrating map there. Chapter 5 is where we get introduced to like one of the worst features of Maddening mode, where you have like the ambush spawns, like ambush spawns with like annoying skills, very difficult and annoying to deal with. Things don't get much better in the paralogs. Like at least like I said, it's been infamous. Like NPCs just kind of charge towards death. Overall, I would say like at least in hard mode, it's a step in the right direction. Like yeah, they're not like invincible, but they'll do their job. They'll contribute at least most of the time. Some exceptions, but then like Felix's paralog on Maddening mode. Rodrigo just killed himself on turn 1. So it's like, well, I hope you like playing Warp, Fly, Dance to kill the boss on turn 1. Because if you want to just kind of play the game more casually, it's like, oh, good luck with that. You might think things improve as you like can play along the game, but no. Chapter 14 is like a route map with infinitely spawning ambush spawn Pegasus Knights. Lovely, annoying map to, difficult map to play. Then you have paralogs like Petra and Bernadetta's paralog, which if Maddening mode didn't exist, this would probably be my worst pick for Fire Emblem Three Houses, just because it outright lies to you. It says kill all the enemies or have Petra escape. But that second one's a complete lie, just triggers more enemies, which is annoying. And then on Maddening mode in particular, you have ambush spawn Meteor Mage Hubert. He can't even learn Meteor Mage. Not only can he use it, but he's an ambush spawn with the Siege Tome. Lovely. And like the end game, I've only had one playthrough of Maddening mode, and it was Blue Lions. But then you get to end game of Blue Lions, and it's like Edelgard, like Hedron Edelgard can basically just like one shot any of your units that she gets lucky with a crit. And then you're finding these like powerful enemies making their way up. Once you get towards like the north of the end, you have like ambush spawned siege tomes, which is just great. However, none of these maps make my list for like Three Houses' worst map. The worst map I would say would have to be Chapter 13, Hunting by Daybreak, or Reunion at Dawn. I will say, if you're playing like on hard mode or normal mode, I've never touched normal mode. If you're playing on hard mode and you've trained up your units in house, I think this is a decent enough map. It's like interesting to see your units like return again, like in like groups, like see them bit by bit return, see their new time skip designs, and it's fairly challenging, at least by hard mode Three Houses standards. But it's doable. You don't get a prep screen, and move on. In maddening, this can just outright soft lock you the game. In my Three Houses maddening mode playthrough, I was using all the Blue Lines units. Not because I was afraid of getting soft locked on this chapter. I just thought it'd be more thematically fitting. But even still, like the Mercedes and Annette I've been training up just get like wrecked by the enemies here. It really just encourages the cheese strat. It's like, well, I hope you've been like training pilots into a flying class so you can, fly over, have someone use Impregnable Wall on him, defeat the boss, and have Sylvain, finish up the other boss with like swift strikes, plus other like cheese strats for the Silver Snow and Verdant Wind routes. Overall, just very annoying play. And also just the cherry on top is if you're playing on Madden mode, you get to this and you just realize you're stuck without like you didn't prepare for an advance, you have the cheese strat. You can't go back to chapter 12 unless you made a backup save. So you can't even like lower the difficulty. You're just basically soft lock, and that's it. Very sad. Very terrible map. Really, I think it's just more, it shows that Three Houses Madden mode in particular is bad rather than this map specifically, but just because of how bad this map is on Madden mode, that's my pick for Three Houses. And last but not least, for Fire Emblem Engage, I think Engage has a problem. Once you get to the last like 5 or so maps, the fun just really like plummets off. You have like enemy spams and like all this kind of annoying stuff happen. My pick was Chapter 23, the Four Hounds, which at this point, yes, you have like all the emblems available to you, but at this point, you're dealing with like this meteor gimmick, and you have all these like flyers with like freeze stabs and infinitely like spawning like reinforcements. Overall, it's just emblematic, I think, of like the last few chapters of like Engage, how it really just struggles to be fun. And yes, there are cheese strats to it, like you can just have Astro with like a sniper hit Zephyr to kind of aggro her over to deal with her and Gris, but it's still just an annoying map to play. And that's my list. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you have any maps you think I overhated, you think they aren't that bad, or any maps I didn't pick, you think they're worse than the ones I chose, please let me know in the comments below. This is Enigmatic Mr. L, signing out.